I did, and it's all bad. So check to see if Sister Erica got something better, because I realize I'm like, man, this is all bad. What I sent was the story about the brother who was murdered by Philadelphia police, but the problem is I did not verify what the video was, because I know that they have released the body cam video. I'm not particularly too keen on watching that at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not sure if the video included in the link that I sent is a package or the 22-minute long body cam video. So if you could
I
double
think
check
it's a
that for me.
22-minute long video, but we don't have to show
No.
the video. We can, for anybody who's seen it, or can talk about the killing. We can go into that. It says officer charged with murder, body cam released in deadly Philadelphia traffic stop shooting. And really quickly, authorities have released body-worn camera videos of a deadly police-involved shooting as the officer involved turned himself in to face criminal charges, including murder, Friday morning. Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner released the 22-minute videos and announced charges against Mark Dial, in the death of Eddie Arazi. Is that it? During a press conference late Friday morning. It says Dial, a 5-year veteran of the force, has been charged with murder, voluntary manslaughter, aggravated assault, simple assault, reckless endangering another person, and official oppression for the August of and official oppression. I've never heard of that as a charge.
Interesting.
Although it sounds like it should be. For the August 14th shooting, he was released on bail. He was charged with murder, released on bail after posting a 10% of $500,000, according to officials. As you see, this is a picture of the cop. And it says last month, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Daniel Outlaw, appropriate name for a cop, suspended Dial with intent to dismiss after 30 days for administrative violations connected to the investigation. Those violations included refusal to properly obey proper order from a superior officer and failure to participate in any departmental investigation, according to Outlaw. I'll stop here where it says, we will conclude our administrative investigation as soon as possible to ensure justice and closure is attained for all affected by the death of Mr. Irizarry, Outlaw said in the statement.
This obviously is a horrible situation where this young man, I believe, was being pursued by this officer and then pulled over. And then the officer just unloaded on him and then attempted to cover up evidence by knocking out, I believe, the driver's side window, which showed bullet holes obviously entering the vehicle. But by the time other officers arrived, he had began to tamper with evidence and began to tamper with the scene. But most of it was captured on his body worn camera. What do you even say? Like, I mean, yes, this is murder. This is all of the charges and probably more that he's being charged with. We don't usually see these kinds of things move at this kind of speed, but it obviously everything must have been so egregious and without question that I suppose in order to keep some sort of peace, they went ahead and charged this cop with murder.
Yeah, it probably points to the obviousness of the facts, as you're saying, the fact that the person was caught on videotape attempting to cover up the scene. And a lot of this stuff does take place. You know, this is why a lot of times folks are pushing for alternatives to a lot of the ways in which these traffic stops are engaged, because a lot of these incidents take place during these traffic stops, whether or not they're the so-called suppression units, which are supposedly trying to take guns off the streets, which stop you sort of willy-nilly based on their own ideas of like who looks like a quote-unquote criminal or not. And then when you have these regular traffic stops, when the officers become aggravated or they feel like you are not obeying their quote-unquote orders right away, they resort to what they have at hand. And what they have at hand is usually heavy weaponry like a gun, nightstick, mace, they use tasers, like we just had here in Atlanta. An older gentleman, Johnny Holman, who was 63, who after a minor accident with somebody else, he survived the accident fine. And when the cops came on the scene to do the report, that's when he was killed, because the cops somehow got aggravated or upset, some 22-year-old cop, and then decided to use what he had on hand to basically wind up killing this man. And that's so these cops, they act out of aggravation And again, no training is going to help that, because they feel like they're empowered to go ahead and commit these things, because very rarely does anything happen to them. And let's remember, just because these charges are filed and or there's a potential indictment, it certainly does not mean that this cop will see jail time, or it certainly does not mean he will see the type of imprisonment or prison time that you would see if this was some case of someone else doing this to another person, or if a cop got shot, to be honest, right? So all these things are yet to be seen. They might be okay first steps, but it just speaks to the ongoing issue of police violence against people in our community.
Yeah. I seen that in the chat someone said that this is the kind of accountability that we're getting because of BLM, and I just wanted to like be clear that I don't think this is an accountability process. I think this is not dissimilar to Mosby rushed to charge all those officers, which was unprecedented. Larry Krasner is of that vein of the progressive prosecutor framework that they're using around all of these newer prosecutors to try to, I guess, convince us that they are not police as well, but they do act as cops. Krasner is very problematic. I think Outlaw just resigned, if I'm not mistaken. So there is no chief of police right now. Well, at least Outlaw is no longer the chief of police. And this is all coming off of the end of the 1033 program in Philadelphia, and then the lawsuit that was produced after 2020. So the idea that they're moving in such a way to view it as progressive is really, I think we need to be viewing it in the context of all the things that have happened since 2020, and them trying to reassess different ways, because the violence from the police has not halted. I mean, this is a city that's still dealing with or still recovering for Walter, what happened to him. So and then, Ant Smith is still under a lot of, he's still dealing with a lot. I think he's still pending his sentencing. So we look at what's happening in Philadelphia in terms of the police actions. I don't think that this is a sign of accountability. I think that they are buying time in most instances and trying to figure out what to do next, because they're not really interested in shifting or changing anything. They're just maneuvering in such a way that they can cover up certain mistakes. But the actual policing of Philadelphia is still as bad as it's always been.
How do you guys view the differences in strategy between Philly police and Larry Krasner releasing the body cam footage of Eddie's being murdered by Officer Mark Dial versus the lack of body cam footage that has not been released in the case of Deacon Holman down there in Atlanta? I posted a clip to Instagram when I covered the story, and it's a bunch of fucking dumb crackers in my goddamn comments talking about, well, let's wait for the body cam to be released. And it's like, you stupid assholes, why do you think the body cam has not been released yet? There's a reason for that.
It's always amazing to me, like they come up, obviously different cities will have different rules around when to release, but it's always interesting to me when when they decide to or when they don't, per se, because usually, like what I've seen so far is when they think they have some obvious thing that they can get some initial excitement around in terms of charging, then they're releasing, and then they're trying to put forth information to suggest that they're going to go after hard because this video. And again, I think you were right earlier that they act in this way because they want to make sure that people don't hit the streets, right? That people are not organizing immediately because they see what's really happened in the past, or what usually happens is that there's this long investigation, there's a lot of silence from the police, and then people are left to speculate about what's happening, and or you have eyewitness testimony that usually contradicts everything that the police have already laid out in terms of like their verbal response to whatever the incident is. So it's always interesting when they play around with this stuff. But what I also think is fascinating too is that when they keep, put up the comment from Hiram, they start now. This has been going on for a little while now. So they're hire first it was black men to be the police chiefs. Now they're hiring Black women to be the police
Mhm.
chiefs, and soon they'll be hiring, in Atlanta, they hired an LGBTQ person to be the police chief. And it's always under the idea that somehow, again, this representation politics, if they somehow look like us or come from similar communities or have some backgrounds that are similar, that somehow we're all supposed to be pleased by that. And the idea somehow is that they're going to solve the issue, when the issue is not going to be solved by the commissioners who are in charge of keeping the system going. The larger issue is the way it operates in the first place, and no one is ever looking in the political circles to fix that. They're only looking to replace, when some bad thing happened, they'll replace somebody with somebody else, but they want to keep the machine going. So I think those things are always like interesting to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the point though. With representation, it's the highest peak now, counterinsurgency. And I believe Outlaw came out of Portland. Hiram, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they brought Outlaw out of Portland 2020, and we know Portland PD is so infamous for their good policing. So they brought Outlaw out to, I guess, again, to frame it as now the city is going to be under the hands of a Black woman. It's going to be dealt with differently. New York did similar, right? New York hired a Black woman police commissioner as well, and I think she stepped down too
She
recently,
did.
right?
Mhm.
So it's just, I don't know what to make of it. It's obviously not anything geared or towards actual safety or protection of communities. It's still, police are still going to serve the same role that they've always served. But I do think it's a very interesting turn towards this representation or identity reductionism around these figures and these particular political seats.